Okay, so I was going to hand out like the result of this meeting, which was like learning goals, which I think you might have seen before. I think Steve, because they're very close to the E&M learning goals. We started with them and we worked from there. But also the division of topics into different semesters, because it's sort of an amorphous class. So the first couple meetings, there was a lot of discussion about what topics should we even teach and where should they go. So this is the concrete results. But I wanted to also give a little bit about like what sort of things came up in these meetings and what kind of discussions do we have to sort of tell you a story. So the story. So on the back of the sheet is the course content story, kind of. So we started with this giant list of math and physics topics, and we had to decide which ones we wanted to teach and which ones not, which ones went in other courses, which ones didn't get taught at all, and then divide them into the 2 semesters of this math method sequence. So there was a lot of, and I think this is the thing faculty talk about most easily, is the course content, what to teach and when to teach it. So this was the first thing we talked about to sort of like get it out in the open. And what surprised me was there was like a remarkable amount of consensus on this, I thought. There were 2 or 3 topics where people were arguing about where they should go, but for the most part, everyone was like, oh yeah, these are the important ones. Like, maybe let's move this one into a different course. I was surprised by how easy it was to get consensus on the course content and where it went.
Right.
Once we started talking.
And to shed like a few things from the
Yeah.
class. Like,
Yeah, people just
like,
say,
like,
yeah,
oh
okay,
no,
we could skip that.
E&M.
It's not that important.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
My experience
so-
is very similar, that when you write things down, rather than carrying it all in your head and all the separate faculty, it's surprisingly easy to realize, oh, this and this that we've done for 8 years is not central to the course. So I'm no longer as surprised at that. The key thing is making the one list and
Yeah.
leaving some stuff off there.
Yeah, and we crossed things off and there really wasn't that much, like, objection.
And there were, like, I would also add to that, there were a few, I think, enlightenment, like a few faculty that were just enlightened because they said, oh, I teach this all the time, I think it's important, but then the other faculty were like, what? so there was just
Yeah, they had to defend their-
there was just like, realization that, well, maybe it's not important, or they're in the minority, just so that they knew where they were on the scale of
revolved around it, but
The faculty opinion, the consensus.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great question.
And then
The only time
Yeah.
I've ever managed to get that to happen is when a certain Nobel laureate said that something was not important. That happened real quickly.
Yeah, so that, our Nobel laureate is no longer involved in this story. I mean,
Yeah.
Mike and I were just talking about how useful that was 7 years ago to start the brown bag lunches, but, Carl has been absent completely from this process, from this particular process. Maybe his legacy remains.
I actually don't think that his presence would have benefited this. Like,
No.
I
not
think it
now,
was-
but now it's already running. See, we have a problem with our,
Right, getting people to come 7 years ago, I'm sure
Was one
that
thing.
Carl standing up and saying this would be a good thing, because other faculty members stood up and said, no, this would be a waste of our time. Teaching is an art, not a science. There's no point in talking about it. And so having that, during that brief debate, having a Nobel Prize winner saying, oh, I disagree,
But
that was
also-
really useful.
Data have been produced in that
but-
department that are replicable and hard to dispute.
Yeah,
and
I don't think
Didn't
data
anybody
makes
say
it.
anything.
I know, we talk about them.
Yeah. See, our department is our chair isn't the person who's saying this is important. Right? So when you have the chair saying it's important and I'm going
That's
to be
a
at the
good point.
meeting, but that makes a big difference, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Nobel laureates and chairs who are paying attention when it comes to faculty evaluation time, being there and saying it is really critical.
Yeah, I
If they're
can't.
not there.
If I recall, this email,
Dave doesn't
which
know.
comes out before each of these 7 meetings, comes from the associate chair, or maybe from the chair.
I think the first one came from the chair.
Chair.
Yeah.
Right, I mean,
But then
the return
Paul and
address
Artel,
on the
so-
email, which goes to the physics faculty list, comes from either the chair or the associate chair. And that surely is significant, especially for junior faculty who are wondering how to spend their time at meetings and see a letter from the chair.
And then also, I don't know if it's important, but there was a report that I wrote up, just a quick summary, that would back out to the faculty afterwards to say, here's what we did in the meeting, and also include who came. You know,
Right.
Oh, I think that's a very
you know,
good
it
idea.
included who was there and who was
Yes.
part of the discussion.
No, that's a very, but see,
Um,
that could have that's a weird thing, because if the perceived important people were not there, then
Well, you
it
make the
sends a
decision
neg-
about whether
Whether to
do that
circulate it.
and who came.
I mean, that, I think you have to think about that,
Right.
because,
So another interesting thing that came up, sort of, I think, while we were discussing what should go in the course, was like how many times do students need to be taught one topic, and this came up like a number of times, and I thought it was sort of an interesting sort of education topic, and it was nice to have faculty discussing it. You know, because they see it in the math course, then they see it again when they need to apply it in the upper division course. So the question is do they need to see it in the middle one extra time? And like, I think for some topics we decided yes, they do need to see it one extra time in the middle, and for other topics we decided no. But several times we just had sort of a philosophical discussion about how many times you need to see something before you've learned it. You know, before you learned it. This was another one that sort of close, like, you know, pretty close to some education research. We had a lot of discussion about student difficulties and when things are difficult for students and when they're proficient at them, as part of choosing what topics need to get covered more. Like, so, you know, instructors in the follow-on courses would be like, well, this particular topic, they were really struggling with it. Like, it was very hard. These were the things they were having trouble with, so maybe these particular things we could focus on a little bit in the middle division course, right? Or someone might say, oh, they were really struggling with it in the end of the course before, so maybe we should do it again in this course. So there was a lot of specific topical difficulties discussed, and I think that was interesting. For some faculty notice these in the courses that they're teaching, and some don't notice in the same course. So I think it was kind of interesting to have these discussions about which particular difficulties which faculty had picked up on. Another interesting thing is I had forgotten about this, but when I was re-listening to some of the discussions, there was a significant part of at least one discussion where student attitudes were discussed. When we were trying to decide whether this was a math course with a little physics or a physics course with a little math, like, basically we kind of decided what the topics were going to be, but how we presented it, the faculty were worried about what the student attitudes would be. Since this is the first real physics class, the
so
affect
those
and
first 2
attitude of the
semesters
students
are
were
not
being
real physics
what?
classes?
No,
Well,
they're not
first
like
is-
upper division physics.
Yeah, this is the first
They don't
physics
make you
major.
major.
This is the first form physics major
Well,
course.
you
so-
might call it the second. I mean, there's
Yeah, it
a
could be the
modern physics
second.
course, which, depending on who teaches it, it can be
Right.
the first introduction to what upper division physics is.
But so there was a discussion of how it would affect student attitudes to make certain changes. One of the goals was to discuss the relative importance of topical learning goals, to pick some out to write conceptual exam questions about. And this was another place where I was surprised by the amount of consensus. Like, pretty much there were maybe 50 different topical learning goals, maybe more like 60. And there were maybe 2 where there was even like some debate. Like, there was discussion on the others, but then everybody was like, okay, right, this is important, or okay, yeah, not that important.
So, like, important or not important?
Yeah,
the
like we want this on the
files?
conceptual exam, or we want it in the course, but we don't need it on the
Right, out
conceptual
of the
exam.
50, Rachel was trying to come up with a dozen or 18
Yeah, and-
questions that we were going to be on a 1-hour conceptual survey at the end of the semester. That's how we were going to measure this course. And so we had to narrow that 50 down by a factor of 3.
Right.
And people were pretty good about saying, take this one, not that one.
And
So
like,
I think you're going to need to elaborate just on how you got to the topical learning.
okay, yeah, I was going to say that for both of these, both the course scale learning goals and the topical scale learning goals, like, I kind of tried to give them assignment like you did and be like, here, bring your ideas. But then I'd also written a bunch of my ideas separately because no one actually did their homework.
Right. Nobody does one.
Right. So we had already started with a long list that I generated, and for the core skill learning goals, Stephanie's core skill learning goals that she created with the faculty previously. So we started with something from both. Like, we didn't start with a blank piece of paper.
But
And also,
they definitely added and subtracted
Yeah.
and said, oh, I don't think this is that important.
yeah, and the way you said this isn't what I really meant. Like, this isn't what I really want. Like, what I really want is this other thing, like
Or,
related to what you
right,
said.
you're
But
missing this piece or-
And I might add that the process of that was a little different in E&M since we didn't have those core scale learning goals to start with. We did actually go in with a blank piece of paper, and I did get 2 people to do their homework. 2 people sent me description, and they were very thoughtful, ideas of what their goals were for their students. But then we just had a lot of general, very amorphous conversations where I was trying to draw faculty out about what they wanted. students to get from that course, like what that course meant, and then I'd go home, translate it into learning goal ease, and bring it back to them and say, is this what you meant?
So, as an observer of this process, I would say both times when I watched Stephanie do this several years ago and now Rachel, I agree that these discussions, I would attend the meeting, it felt like an amorphous conversation. People were expressing opinions and arguing, and I sort of walked away thinking, uh-oh, like that was not a productive meeting. And then 2 days later, this document would get sent out that said, here's my summary of what happened in the meeting. And sometimes I thought, you made that up.
It was still good.
Yeah, but it was good. And in particular, the faculty then had the opportunity to say, no, that's not what I said, or no, you missed something. But that never happened. Now, it may be that you ended up putting your imprimatur on it, and it wasn't really faculty generated. It was really STF generated. But it sure looks and feels faculty generated because of this process.
Yeah.
So I think it.
And the faculty feel like they generated it. Like when we looked at it, when we looked at your document, and we were in the second set of conversations, there were a couple faculty who were like, "Oh yeah, when we made this,
Right.
like this is like
That's
they-
like the scientists' ideas in PEC.
Right.
So
But I
Stephanie
would
used
say
to
with-
put people's names
Yeah, I
in
was
the
gonna
first
ask.
stages, like before this document got generated. Each of these things had initials after it.
Yeah, of the person whose ideas generated that goal, and sometimes the initials were my own. So there was some accountability as to where that came from. I was
Right.
like, oh, this didn't come in our discussions. This is something I came up with. So
And I would
That's
say,
cool. That's
Rachel,
smart.
that really worked well.
With the specific learning goals, I would feel like that was really actually, those were quite productive conversations that we've had since Rachel's had the specific learning goals, and the faculty have had very specific comments on them, and then,
yeah, and then I rewrote
you
them.
just revise them and send them out, and,
Well, because it's the same way, like if you're thinking about a problem, as soon as somebody frames the problem, if you're left amorphous, it's one thing. If somebody frames the problem, already you start to see, okay, well, I don't like this,
Right,
like that.
right. It's
I mean,
concrete.
so that's a real
It's concrete.
catalytic thing to do, right? And then you feel like you're getting somewhere.
but I think, it was really critical that Rachel had been sitting in on this class, all semester.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and actually that's how I generated the list of learning goals. Is every
Well,
day when I
because
was
you were
sitting
there,
in, I was
you
thinking,
knew
oh,
it.
what would be the learning goal for this course? Are there some that are missing? Like,
Yeah, Rachel had been in that class all semester.
That's right.
This term. That's cool. Although in the summer you had not yet.
right, I did sit in a little
Sat in.
previously, so I wasn't coming in completely. What is this course? Right.
But you
Oh.
also supply a little bit of reality, right? So in the sense that somebody can think they're doing something and not be doing it.
Oh, I don't usually point that.
You know it, right?
Yeah. Another interesting thing that came up since this was a middle division course was the idea of skills versus concepts. Because I'd framed it as, oh, we'll write this conceptual exam that'll tell students they're doing pre-post with their conceptual and fundamental concepts of this course. And in the second, I think it was the second meeting, someone brought up that actually what we want from this course is skills, not concepts. So we had an interesting discussion about, like, what it is fundamentally that this course is helping students with. Is it their conceptual understanding, or are they building skills? And is it okay to make a pre-post diagnostic for skills? So that was an interesting conversation that
That
we
would
had.
think it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, but then, okay, so this brings up, so you're actually coming right into the next thing we discussed. It's a lot easier to do things with skills, but it's harder to not make it overlap with the final.
Sure.
So when we were discussing this, another concern that brought up, and particularly since I'm hoping to, make people use this pre-post test, have them find it useful. I was glad it came up in the meeting, which is the utility of creating such a thing in the first place. Like, why would you do that? Is basically what one of the faculty
Right, and-
members
and-
asked. Like, how would that ever be useful to me? I see how it could be useful to you. But like, how would that be useful for me?
Right. And why should I spend an entire precious class period on this? I mean, that's
Right.
always
When I already have my final that's assessing the things I care about.
Right.
And what was
How did
interesting
that
is
discussion go?
the first
Tell us
response
more.
to that was not from any of the PER attendees. It was from another faculty member who gave a response that was like, well, yes, you have your final, but this tests something slightly different. Plus, this one you can use over and over again and compare different semesters where you can't do that with a final. So,
And was that convincing?
I think only partially. I mean, the discussion continued.
We don't know. whether the faculty
Yeah.
member who raised that question, who will almost certainly teach the course again, we don't know whether he
Yeah.
will agree to.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was still a little skepticism in him, you know, I sensed a little skepticism